fair, there is a big but. They've sacked a manager and they're 15th, 14th in the league or 13th in the league.
Which is really...
So that's bad.
But the way you're saying, I understand Man United couldn't win the league, but...
I know, it's bad.
Is 13th or 14th okay then?
No, it's not. Where they are...
So all the teams mid-table, forget about... I'm not even asking United to compete with Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, City, all these... I think United should be ahead of Palace and these teams.
No, I agree. I agree.
So how are we going to say that's success? What's your bread and butter as a footballer?
No,
You're in a big club. What's your bread and butter?
To
win week in, week out.
But we're in the realms here of would you rather finish in the sort of top 6 or would you rather win the FA Cup? We're in the realms of what's more important, winning a trophy
Your question, we can go back to the recording. Your question was, would I see that as a successful season? No.
We'll get back to Roy and Gary in just a quick second, but remember, if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to click the notification button so that you know when the next Big D video hits. And as ever, if something is on your mind, if something is bubbling up inside of you that you need to express, please express it in the comments. The Big D reads all of the comments and he's always interested in what is on your mind. Anyway, in this little clip, it's a little clip from the overlap, and it's Gary and Roy and the rest of the team having a little chat about Man United potentially winning the Europa League this season, and they're discussing whether or not that would be considered a successful season. Now, there's two different opinions in this little clip between Gary and Roy, and well, it's interesting. Roy doesn't think it will be a successful season, whereas Gary does. And it's interesting to see this sort of play out. But anyway, have a look at the clip. Stick around for after the clip because the Big D is going to be giving his thoughts about whether or not it will be a successful season for Man United. And also the Big D's thoughts about why this is a good example of why Roy Keane didn't make it as a football manager. Anyway, here they are.
Right.
Mucks.
If Manchester United win the Europa League, will it be a successful season?
Yeah. Of course it will. It has to be. They've won something.
I agree.
Of course it will.
They get
What if there's still like 15th
there'll be a
in the
but,
league?
obviously.
Right. But if they won that, but it didn't mean, are you saying because it gets them in the Champions League?
Well,
you were just about to say that.
Just winning a trophy, but also the impact of that getting into the Champions League.
If this year, if that didn't mean they got in the Champions League, we just, let's say, be a successful season.
I always think if you win a trophy...
It's successful because it gets them in the Champions League.
If you're winning a trophy in years that you're not winning the league, I always think you're still keeping momentum.
Not that trophy.
So you think it's luck?
Not for Man United. For other teams winning the trophy. I think there's a plus to it because it gets them in the Champions League. Yeah. But I think the trophy and the competition itself shouldn't be enough for United. Absolutely not.
What, is it just because it's the Europa League?
But when you
if it was the Champions League and they had a poor season,
I disagree
what
with
about that trophy?
I disagree with it. Because I knew they
You understand what I'm saying? One second, girl. So I want Mr. Tell Roy's saying that it shouldn't be just the trophy because I'm asking...
I think it's more the rewards.
Is it the Europa League? If it was they were playing this badly, but they were found the form in the Champions League and they were where they are in the Champions League... The
way I see it is United...
Your question, you said if they win it, do you see it as a successful season?
I would say.
I would say yeah.
Absolutely not.
I would say yes.
I would say yes.
To lose that many league matches?
I think no, because of the league position.
Yeah, but so I'm asking you, is it because it's the Europa League? If they were in the Champions League and they were playing that poorly in the league, but they were winning the Champions League, would you be happy?
Of course.
Yeah, but it's still a trophy, isn't it?
Well, I'll give you a choice. Would you rather win the Europa League or the Champions League?
I'd rather think. You know what?
Just come back.
No. I'd rather win the Europa League simply because.
No, but Roy, to be fair, the reason I'd say it's successful because United couldn't win the league this season at the start. We knew that, so they could only win 3 trophies. Yes. They could only win the FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and the Europa League. They could only win 3 trophies, so they've won one of them. I'd say I knew they couldn't win the league. You knew they couldn't win the league, so I would say it's successful because of that. Yeah. Now, to be fair, there is a big but. They've sacked a manager and they're 15th, 14th in the league or 13th in the league.
Which is really
that's bad.
But the way you're saying, I understand Man United couldn't win the league, but.
I know, it's bad.
Is 13th or 14th okay then?
No, it's not. Where they are...
So all the teams mid-table, forget about... I'm not even asking United to compete with Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, City, all these... I think United should be ahead of Palace and these teams.
No, I agree. I agree.
So how are we going to say that's success? What's your bread and butter as a footballer? You're in a big club. What's your bread and butter?
To
win week in, week out.
But we're in the realms here of would you rather finish in the sort of top 6 or would you rather win the FA Cup? We're in the realms of what's more important, winning a trophy
Your question... We can go back to the recording. Your question was, would I see that as a successful season? No. But it's a kind of it's a great opportunity to get into Champions League, and it's their best way of getting it. But I wouldn't say winning that trophy for Man United is a successful season. So I'm happy to disagree with you.
I'd be happy to win that if I'm Man United at the minute, simply
I would.
because of where they are.
Well,
I think it's hard to use the word
Well,
success when you look at what's happened in the league. I think it's hard to.
They've lost 13 league games.
No, but even
There's
last,
only 4 trophies to win, and they've got a chance of winning one.
I'm not about the 4 trophies. I'm
You've
not
got to take it.
But go competing week in, week out.
but keep picking up trophies
they're working
in your
towards that.
non-successful.
But Man United
periods.
are always looking for get out of jail cards. When Mourinho won it, I'll get you in the Champions. But it's no point Man United being in the Champions League like they were the last 2 years ago and being rubbish in it. You want to be in it if you think you've got a bit of a chance. I understand smaller clubs get in. You go, listen, if Forest get in next year, you might go, listen, fantastic. But for a club of Man United, history.
But they have to get into the Champions League, Roy, to get the money to be able to then
And
challenge the league.
And that's the big plus. I don't think winning Europe. The big plus is getting the Champions League.
Yeah.
Where
Anyway,
did Man United finish when they won the FA Cup?
last year? Were they 8th last year?
Yeah, it's about 8th.
8th.
See, so it's kind of like you can go, it's all right, but I do think that 13th, 14th is like terrible. Sorry,
It's what, sorry?
Like terrible.
It's terrible.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's not terrible if you've got a trophy.
It's not good.
I would take what Arsenal now. If Arsenal had that season with the fact that everybody's going on about my manager not winning, if we could win the Europa League, I'd take it.
Well, you're winning the Champions League this
Well, with
year.
a 14th league position, would you
Yeah.
take it?
You know, you take it because at the end of the day, the fans would be happy with something, wouldn't they? I don't know how the Man United fans would feel.
It'd be
It's
massive.
big to
It'd be
win that
massive
now.
for Arsenal.
Fans
for
would be happy
Mikel,
to
for
win
Mikel
that.
Arteta to win the Champions League. It'd be massive. And then
Oh,
completely.
yeah.
He needs
Champions
that as
League's
well.
another ball game, though, isn't
We're
it?
crying his eyes out.
Right.
You'd be on the bus with him, won't you? You'd be on the
Last
I'm
question.
on the bus.
I don't think they'll be on a bus.
They all love him. All the players love him.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Not the ones that contacted
the
him.
Adidas.
They're just very.
Sorry.
They're Adidas lads.
Same question for Tottenham. If Tottenham were to win the Europa League,
Okay, so yeah, I completely disagree with Roy Keane. I think if Manchester United win the Europa League this season, I think all things considered, it will be a successful season for Manchester United within the context of this season. And I feel as though, see, a lot of these sort of ex-pros, like a Roy Keane, say, and a Paul Scholes as well, and they were great players, 2 of the best. I still say to this day, Roy Keane is the greatest Premier League player of all time. But when they go into management, what they seem to misread, I feel, is context. They don't look at the context of the situation that they are actually in, and they expect everyone around them to be on their level straight away like that. So for him to say that Man United winning the Europa League this season is not a good season, that United should be competing for the Champions League, it's like, well, Roy, you can't just magically fix it like that. Man United are not the team that they were when you were playing for them in 1999. They're not the team that they were in 2008 when they were challenging for those trophies. It's been a slow decline for Manchester United. And Ineos have just been in charge for about 12 months now. So for them to win 2 trophies in a 12-month period, being the FA Cup and the Europa League, considering that, you know, they've had 3 different managers, there's been chaos behind the scenes, you know, the form has been up and down. We've had players who have been, you know, have been having a negative influence on the team and all of that stuff. For them to be able to do that, that will be a successful season. Because it takes time to build a club up to the level that they want to, you know, be at. In this case, Man United being the best team in the world. Because Sir Jim has made the statement that that's where he wants the club to be the best team in the world. And that's winning Premier Leagues and winning Champions Leagues. Now, winning the Europa League is a massive step in that direction. So considering all the chaos, for them to be able to do that, they're headed the right way. But I can imagine if Roy Keane was in charge of Manchester United, he would just get frustrated too quickly and his emotions would get in the way, and you know, you would expect them to be challenging for the Champions League within 6 months, and that it's just not realistic. So this is a perfect example of what I mean by some of these players. They're just overly critical. You know, you've got to give a little bit of credit sometimes, and if Man United were able to do that, all things considered, that would be a massive achievement. So, see, this is what sort of frustrates me, really, the big D, that is, when it comes to these ex-pros as pundits. They don't give credit when credit is due, but they're more than happy to criticise when the opportunity arises, which is unnecessary. You cannot compare this season's Manchester United with the standards of... Let me rephrase that. You cannot expect Manchester United today to rise to the level of Manchester United back in 2008 and 1999. You can't, because they're just not good enough yet. However, if this team, which is half as good, let's say, as the teams of yesteryear, were managed to be able to get into the Champions League by even though they finished 13th or 15th in the league, that's a massive achievement. And they deserve more credit. So that just kind of, it disappoints me, that, really. But, he's entitled to his opinion. Fair enough. But I'm entitled to mine. And I don't think, I think it's a bit disingenuous what he's saying there. And I don't know. But I agree with Gary. If Man United were to win the Europa League, it would be a good season. But anyway, what do you guys think? Would it be a successful season for Manchester United if they won the Europa League this season? And if not, that's fine. Put it in the comments. Big D reads all of the comments. But what do you think Man United's chances are of winning the Europa League? And, well, it would certainly be a sight to see, and I would find it hilarious if Man United were to get into the Champions League through the back door in the Europa League. And I disagree with Roy when he says that, you should only be in the Champions League if you're going to win it. He says, well, come on, mate, that's just a boneheaded comment, really, because even just playing in the group stage, it's going to be they're going to be able to get lots and lots of money that they can use then to invest into the club. Incremental steps, just build, and then eventually it compounds to the point where, boom, you've got a good side there. And, for him to sort of bring up, well, why is it successful just because they're in the Champions League or for winning a trophy? Well, it's both, obviously. It's both. And the Europa League is probably, let me think, the second most important cup competition in club football, European club football. If you think about it, because if you win that, you qualify for the Champions League. And it's still a trophy as well. And it does have a history, because it's the old European Cup Winners' Cup and UEFA Cup combined. And it is difficult to win. You play so many matches, and there are some good teams in it. And they're all competing to try and get into the Champions League. So there is a bit of prestige to that. And, you do earn a lot more money from that than you do from, say, winning the League Cup or the FA Cup, which, unfortunately, they are meaningless trophies now, really. I'm sorry to say that. I personally think you should give a Champions League slot to the FA Cup winners, because then that would, bump up the credibility of the FA Cup again. But that's a story for another video. But anyway, thoughts in the comments, and the Big D will see you in the next one.